Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is William Wolf. I'm very happy to be here. It's July 20, 2025. My guest today is Devin Spear. It's going to be a very interesting show. It's going to be about debunking Palestinian claims at genocide against Israel. Devin Spear, thank you for being here today.
Pleasure to be here, Bill.
To the topic at hand, debunking Palestinian claims of genocide. First, can you give us what a definition of genocide is? I think we all have an idea, but I'd like to hear your definition.
Yes, well, that's good because a lot of people are throwing that word around and using it incorrectly. So, first of all, what genocide is not. Genocide is not a large number of casualties. And genocide is not even a large number of civilian casualties. Genocide is an attempt to wipe out an entire nation. What Yoni Titi was referring to in Syria with the Druze, that's an attempt at genocide. They're trying to wipe the Jews out. What happened in the Holocaust, that was a genocide because the Nazis were trying to wipe out the Jewish people. What happened in Armenia when the Turks tried to wipe out the Armenians, that was a genocide. But when the Allies, for example, killed 8 million Germans in World War II through area bombing of their cities, no one calls that a genocide, and it's not, because we weren't aiming to wipe out the German nation. We're aiming to end the war and end German aggression.
Just like with Japan and the atomic bombs, basically.
Just the same story. No one says America committed genocide, even though hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese were killed, because, again, it's not about the number of killed. Genocide has to do with the intention.
Okay, let's talk about Hamas and its supporters. They claim Israel is committing genocide against the people in Gaza. Is there any truth to this claim?
So this is demonstrably false. Let me begin, first of all, with the population figures. Gaza has a very fast-growing population. It generally grows at about 2% a year, which is one of the highest, if not the highest in the world. But over the last year, population of Gaza grew by 2.84%. So even faster than usual. Now, if there were a genocide going on, the population would not be growing, it would be shrinking. The population of Jews in Europe during the Holocaust didn't go up. The population of Armenians in the Armenian Genocide didn't go up. It went almost to zero. So just the numbers alone of population growth in Gaza belie the idea of genocide.
Of course, with the strength of Israel's military, if they really wanted to commit a genocide, it would have been over a long time ago, and we wouldn't even be talking about it now.
Yes, of course. Well, they've bombed almost every building in Gaza because Hamas has used it, but they were careful to ask people to leave those areas first, and that's why the Gaza lies in ruins, and yet the people are still there.
Okay, aside from the growth in Gaza's population, are there any other evidences contradicting Hamas's claim of an Israeli genocide?
Yes, you can look at the behavior of the IDF. So do people who are attempting to commit genocide usually supply water, electricity, food, and all the needs to the population the way the IDF has supplied Gaza? And people say, well, they're not getting enough food. But that's because Hamas is hijacking the trucks, taking the food, and reselling it at exorbitant prices to the people in Gaza in order to finance their terrorist activities. And conversely, do the people against whom a genocide is being perpetrated normally shoot rockets at their perpetrators? Do they massacre their perpetrators as Hamas did on October 7th? Do they engage in mass rapes? Do they take and hold hostages? So that's not the behavior of someone who is being under threat of genocide.
Okay, then on what do the Palestinians base any accusations of genocide against Israel?
So they base their accusation on casualty numbers. And as I said before, casualty numbers don't tell a story about intent. But even let's talk about those casualty numbers. They talk about a casualty number of 50,000 people. Now, the problem is that the press here repeats that, but it comes from the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health. And there was a recent report by the Henry Jackson Society in the UK that analyzed those figures. And what they found is that the 50,000 includes combatants, Hamas's own terrorists who have been killed by the IDF. It includes everyone who over the last 2 years has died of natural causes in Gaza. It kills people who were killed by Hamas themselves, where, for example, they shoot down civilians who are trying to get aid. And it includes all those killed by their own rocket fire where the rockets fall short. By the way, there are people listed there who are named Mohammed who are counted as women, and there are people who are 13 years old who are 30 years old who are counted as children. So they're also skewing the numbers to make it look like there are more people being killed than there are, and that more of them are women and children.
Well, of course, they can make up any numbers they want. There's no way really to verify their lies.
Right.
Or to discount them.
Right. Well, the Henry Jackson Society looked into it, added up the numbers, and came to a different conclusion.
Well, then how many Palestinian civilians have actually been killed in the war?
So according to that report, the actual number is less than half. That is 22,500 non-combatants were killed in Gaza. Israel confirms 20,000 confirmed kills of Hamas terrorists. So we're talking about roughly a 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio.
Okay. Well, how does that ratio compare to the civilian versus combatant casualties in other wars?
That would be a very low ratio, particularly in urban warfare, perhaps lower than has been achieved by any other army in modern urban warfare. And we have to take into account on top of that Israel is fighting a three-dimensional war with Hamas having built an enormous underground tunnel system that goes all under the civilian infrastructure that's larger than the New York City subway system, that they built specifically under hospitals, schools, and civilian infrastructure in order to maximize civilian casualties. In other words, Israel is seeking to avoid civilian casualties on Gaza's side because it makes Israel look bad. And they are seeking to maximize civilian casualties because it makes Israel look bad. And so they exaggerate the numbers and they place their military infrastructure in such a way that in order to get at them, you're going to have civilian casualties.
Well, they use civilians as shields, basically.
Right. They're using the whole population as civilians, as human shields. Most of the openings to the tunnels that Israel has found were either in children's rooms, schools, or nurseries.
Would it be true to say that the century-old Palestinian attempt to wipe out Israel is genocidal in intent?
Yes. Like many of the slanders of Palestinian slanders against Israel, the claim of genocide isn't merely a lie, it's a reversal of the truth. Because from the beginning, it is the Palestinians who have been intent on genocide against the Jews of Israel, and not the other way around. Palestinian claims of genocide against Israel are really a projection of their own intentions. And you can see this codified in the Hamas and PLO charters, where they call for the destruction of Israel, the statements by their leaders that are constantly talking about destruction of Israel, their supporters marching in the street, who are calling for the destruction of Israel. That's what they mean when they say from the river to the sea. In other words, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, Israel should be wiped out. Those are genocidal ideas. What's happening is that the Palestinians are claiming that the Jews intend to do to them precisely what they actually intend to do to the Jews.
Okay, now what's interesting and tragedy is all these other people and groups that have picked up this call against Israel. For instance, the well-known demonstrations on campus, like on Columbia University, where these people, I don't know if they're professional agitators, Palestinians or what, but they are calling for the destruction of Israel. And that's not isolated. It's many many schools all over the country have been doing that.
Yes, I think what happened is this, that they actually thought they were going to win. They actually thought they were going to overrun Israel, that Hamas was going to attack, Hezbollah was going to attack simultaneously, the Houthis would attack, Iran would support them, and they were going to overrun Israel. So the mask is off. They're no longer talking about peace. They're talking about wiping out Israel. And amazingly, their useful idiots on campus regurgitate that. And they accuse Israel of exactly what they're advocating, which is genocide. They're advocating genocide against the Jews of Israel, and they're claiming that Israel is committing genocide.
Now, obviously, there are some professional agitators there, but those are not all professional agitators. These are a lot of them are just students. I mean, are these people brain dead, or what is going on? Why do they just jump on this bandwagon of calling for genocide against Israel?
Basically, these are people who hate Western civilization, hate the United States. You can't call them communists because they don't have a plan the way the communists did. But what they're left with on the far left is the Soviet anti-Zionist and anti-American propaganda. So they're full of hate for the United States, for Israel, for the Jews, and anything that supports that, for example, the Palestinian movement, then they're on board with it. The fact that it's a terrorist organization, the fact that it's lies, is of no consequence. These are the same people you saw in Antifa marches, in Black Lives Matter marches, and then they're now on anti-ICE marches, and they're the same useful idiots and have no idea what they're talking about.
Okay, but the problem is it shows you how many people are maybe just gullible but have joined this rotten bandwagon. It's just frightening to me.
I agree that there's a lot of people who have shown themselves to be shallow and gullible, but I would emphasize it's very shallow. Yesterday they were on Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and then they were on to the Israel issue, and now they're on to the ICE issue, and tomorrow they'll be on to something else, because they have no coherent belief system. They have, for example, no clear idea of what they would replace the United States with or Western civilization with if they should win. And they're just the useful idiots of the jihadists who would slaughter them all as soon as they got power.
And, it's amazing. I've said this on the show many times. You have homosexuals, you have bisexuals, you have women who are marching against Israel. I would just be very interested to see what happened if they went to one of these other countries in the Middle East to see what happens to them. I will mention that Israel and Israel alone in the Middle East, as far as I know, can have a gay rights parade in Tel Aviv and nobody's going to bother them at all.
And what would happen to them is they'd be cured of their delusions immediately.
Because they wouldn't be breathing anymore.
Right. Their pronouns would be were, was.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, the ignorance of a lot of these people. They just don't realize what would happen if they were in some of these countries.
No, sheer ignorance. When they say from the river to the sea and you ask them what river, they don't know. What sea, they don't know. They're mouthing slogans and have no idea what's behind it. They simply think it makes them revolutionaries or rebels or something like that.
Okay, so it's obvious from our previous discussion, but it's obviously that is not correct to say that both sides are engaged in genocide. The only ones that are interested in trying to do genocide is the Hamas, Palestinians, etc.
Yes, look, genocide and fighting against genocide are not the same thing. So the Palestinians came across attempting genocide. They killed every Jew they came across if they didn't kidnap them or rape them or murder them. And there's a difference between fighting back against those people and genocidal intent. So Israel is defending itself against genocide, not committing genocide.
Right. And people just don't seem to realize this, or maybe they don't want to realize it. Maybe that's one of the reasons we're doing the show here, so we can get the truth out to the people. But you have some people who are just brain dead. They don't want to listen. They don't want to understand. They have the idea that the Jews are bad and that Israel should be destroyed. There's no dissuading them from that viewpoint, believe me.
Well, what the left has done is it has classified the Jews as white, colonialists, and so on, and therefore you are automatically in the wrong.
Is there any additional evidence aside from their constant declarations about wiping Israel off the map that demonstrate the Palestinian genocidal intentions against the Jews of Israel?
Yes, it's not just rhetoric. It's in their actions. So Israel survived till now because it won every single war. Had it not won any one of those wars, Israel wouldn't be here because the Arabs would have fulfilled their commitment to wipe Israel out. However, there were circumstances where the Arab armies took over Jewish areas during a war. And in every single one of those circumstances, they killed every Jew who they came across. So, for example, in 1929, the Arabs of Hebron took over the Jewish section of Hebron, which by the way, had been Jewish since biblical times. And they killed every Jew.
All right, 30 seconds, please.
In the Ma'alot massacre in 1974, they got into a school in northern Israel and killed every school kid. And again, on October 7, 2023, they came across 1,200 Israelis and killed them all. So their actions also speak of genocide.
Let's take some calls here. Aiden from Phoenix, go ahead. What's your question?
Since Devin has been in Israel recently, have there been any changes in Israeli firearm laws that allow more civilian Israelis and loyal Druze citizens to be armed, so in case there is another terrorist attack, they're not just depending on the army to protect them? I'll take my answer off radio.
All right, I think that's a great question. Thank you.
Great question, Aiden. Yes, so it happens that I've been trying to get a license for a weapon in Israel myself and not able to so far. So there have been more weapons given out to security teams because it was the security teams that really stopped the massacre on October 7th since the army wasn't anywhere to be found. So they have done that. But as far as private people getting weapons, they have all kinds of restrictions. And although I was in the army and I'm on the security team in my synagogue and I know how to use a weapon, so far I don't meet the criteria that they want me to meet. There are more weapons out there, but not like it is in the United States, not nearly enough. And there have been many terrorist incidents that have been stopped by people who happen to have weapons. And it seems to me that they should have more, but they've loosened it up, but not nearly enough.
Okay, again, thanks for the question, Aiden. Let's go to Joe from Phoenix. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Devin. I appreciate your explanation, straightening out the claims of genocide. I think, I hear the Palestinian narrative that they're victims of all of these things, including genocide. But at the heart of their claims is the justification, I guess, that they present, which is the occupation of their land, their homes have been stolen, and of course, on top of that, then all the abuse that they claim, which is, you explained largely, I think, that with your explanation of genocide. But getting to the heart of their justification, is there something you could say about that? That they seem to justify all of these things by saying it's somehow just that they do all of these things because, of course, they're fighting for what's theirs somehow. Is that, how would you articulate that?
Well, you're right. They claim that they are the original native inhabitants of Israel, which is a lie. The Jews are the original native inhabitants of Israel, and that we are the colonizers, which is a lie. The Muslims are colonizers. They colonized it in the 7th century with the Arab conquest. So they also lie about history and reverse causality. And you're right. Their supporters say, yes, well, they're doing terrible things, but they're oppressed and so on. But all of that is also a lie. The Jews are called Jews because we're from Judea. You can open a Bible and find that we are the original native inhabitants of Israel and have lived there continuously for almost 4 millennia. There are no Arabs in the Bible. You won't find any walking around Jerusalem because they weren't in the land yet until the Arab conquest. So the idea that they are the native inhabitants and we are the colonizers is an exact reversal of the truth as well.
What a surprise that there'd be an exact reversal from the Arabs, huh? I do have an email question from Henry in Baltimore. Henry writes, why do you think it is that during the past year and a half, not a single Palestinian in Gaza has come forward with information about a single hostage, even though Israel has offered substantial cash rewards for this information?
That's a really good question, and I've been wondering about it myself because Israel offered, I think it was a $5,000 reward for any Palestinian who would come forward and say where the hostages are. And they know where the hostages are because we've rescued a few who are just in people's houses. And and it's a small place. They see the Hamas going in and out of their tunnels. They know where the hostages are. And interestingly, they haven't come forward. Part of it may be they're afraid, but now Hamas isn't really in charge of Gaza, and they're still not coming forward. So my overall answer would be is they support Hamas. They elected Hamas. Polls show they enthusiastically would re-elect it. That support for Hamas went up after the October 7th massacre, and they're not coming forward because they support Hamas.
Devin, some have called the Palestinian claim of genocide a modern blood libel. Can you explain what that means?
Yes. During the Middle Ages, before they would massacre the Jews, anti-Semites would claim that the Jews had captured a Christian a kid and murdered him and used his blood to make matzah. It's ridiculous. There's no blood in matzah. And it's just one of those insane anti-Semitic things that ignorant people in the Middle Ages might have believed. But the Palestinian claim of genocide against Israel today is like a modern version of this medieval blood libel. It's equally baseless, but it has the same goal, which is to demonize the Jews in preparation for genocide against them. In other words, you want to demonize the people against whom you intend to commit genocide in order to excuse in advance the genocide you intend to commit.
Okay, thank you. I really do want to get into the situation with your situation being in Israel, by the way. I want to mention also that on Fareed Zakaria's show this morning on CNN, he had an Israeli who was agreeing that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza. Obviously, different people can have different opinions. The news media always seems to like to find somebody who's anti-Israel, and especially if they happen to be Jewish or Israeli.
And they won't have a problem finding leftists in Israel who will say anything that's critical of Netanyahu and makes him look bad. Because they want power and he's in their way. And Americans can understand this because it's very much the same as what the Democrats do with President Trump, where they spread lies about Russian collusion and all kinds of other misinformation and will immediately regurgitate it despite the fact that there's no evidence for it. Anything to make Netanyahu look bad.
All right. Now, let's get back personally. Talk about your situation. How long were you in Israel before you returned to Scottsdale?
We were in Israel 2 months. We're basically there for 4 months a year, 2 months at a time.
When you say we, you're talking about yourself and your wife, correct?
Yes.
You have a daughter and family who live there?
I have a daughter and grandchildren in Israel, and same here.
Okay. You have a residence in Israel?
Yes, I have an apartment in Israel in the same building as my granddaughter.
Okay. You obviously got there before the recent conflict with Iran, the active conflict, I'll say, because the conflict's been going on for decades.
Yes, actually, I've been there throughout the whole of the conflict. We arrived there 3 days after the massacre of October 7th, and we decided we were on our way. We're in Croatia, and we decided to just continue with our trip. And I said I want to stay till the victory, which I thought was 2 months later. And now, almost 2 years on, I still wanted to see the victory. And I did see the victory with Iran, and I was happy to be there. But you're referring to the war with Iran.
Correct.
Which President Trump calls the 12-day war, because that specific part of the war lasted 12 days. But in fact, Israel's been at war now for almost 2 years on 7 fronts. The Houthis in Yemen, the Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraqi and Syrian militias backed by Iran, and Iran itself.
Okay, did you say the victory against Iran? There's been no victory against Iran.
Well, it's not a total victory, but it was ended in a victory in that we achieved what we wanted to achieve at this stage, and they agreed to our terms. I call that a victory.
Okay, I don't.
Well, a defeat would have been there's no Israel.
I understand that, but the victory to me would have been regime change in Iran, and their atomic weapons ability would have been completely destroyed. I hear a lot of different people, different opinions about how far back it was set back.
I hear all kinds of opinions too, and I don't know what to believe. What I do know is that yes, we want regime change. But A, that's not really Israel's responsibility. And B, if it's going to be Israel's responsibility, it's the Mossad. You're not going to achieve it through further bombing. It has to be done by the Iranian people internally. And yes, we should encourage it.
Okay. We can agree to disagree about the term victory. So let's move on to some calls. Richard from Scottsdale, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Devin, the UK has several towns and villages with Muslim mayors, including London itself. And now there's a potential for New York City to have a Muslim mayor who makes no bones about his feelings about Israel and Jews. So what are your comments? And I'll take my answer offline. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I am from New York, and I'm very glad that I don't live in New York. I think it's a disgrace to New Yorkers that they voted for this guy in the Democratic primary. Now, having said that, only 13% of the people voted in the primary, so he got, a section of that. But I think it's terrible and shocking that this flat-out, stone-cold anti-Semite and communist is the Democratic candidate for the mayor of New York. I think he may well win, and New York will be destroyed because he's talking about confiscating property, rent control, taxing wealthy people, and of course that's going to cause the wealth to flee. And New York will look like a lot of other cities that have been totally destroyed by that sort of insane policy. But as a Jew, the fact that he's an anti-Semite, to me, is a line, no matter what his other policies were, that I could not support him. I'm shocked to say that 20% of the Jews actually voted for Mamdani because their real religion is liberalism and not Judaism, and that shows where they're coming from. He's a slickster. He's a they say he has a charisma, but the man's policies are a disaster, and the fact that he's an anti-Semite alone should make him taboo in the Democratic Party, just as if he was a white racist, it would make him taboo no matter what other policies he held. And the fact that that's not the case tells you that there's something very deeply wrong with the Democratic Party.
Well, why should somebody have more money than someone else just because they're willing to work hard for it?
Right. Well, okay.
I'm being facetious, obviously, but
you can argue that. But again, the fact that he's an anti-Semite, a party that talks about tolerance and concern for everyone, but not when it comes to the Jews. It's really only concern for special groups and not for other groups. So they're liars. They're hypocrites. I don't respect them. And they are revealing themselves for who they are. And I will say this, that if Mamdani is elected, and even the fact that he's their candidate is going to hurt the Democratic Party nationally, because the Republicans are going to make him the face of the Democratic Party, and that's not where the United States is.
Okay. Let's move on. Jock from Scottsdale has a question. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, a quick question. I know Yoni's been around a long time, and he's got his opinions, and he doesn't feel really good about the current president. And I'm having some second thoughts about the current president, too. I've been a strong supporter of it, but I'm just concerned whether your guest feels that the president is doing the best job he can under the circumstances, or if he's becoming a failure in office.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. I'm a supporter of President Trump. I'm still a supporter of President Trump, but I feel and have always felt that, like many Americans, he does not have a good grasp of affairs outside the United States. He sees things in terms of business deals. I don't think he understands who he's dealing with President Xi of China or Khamenei or Putin or Kim Jong-il or Shara in Syria. I think he believes that this is a rational business discussion, and he doesn't understand religious fanatics because he's not one, and he doesn't understand the depth of the hatred because he's not a hater. And like most Americans, he's simply a little bit misinformed and misunderstands the world outside the United States. And I think that's his problem. I think he's doing a great job domestically, and I'd vote for him again on that basis. But I think in foreign policy, certainly better than Biden. I mean, Biden was backing the wrong side. He just doesn't he's naive. He thought he could achieve peace with Putin. I mean, it was obvious to anyone who understands Putin that Putin's not going to do anything but keep going in Ukraine. Trump's a quick study, however. He's figured out Putin now. He understands he's been duped. He'll figure out al-Shara. He'll figure out, he's already figured out the Ukraine-Russian war. He'll figure it out, but it shouldn't take this much time.
I would love to have either Carl Goldberg or Robert Spencer have a half an hour with President Trump to educate him on Islam and what it's really all about, but obviously that's not going to happen. All right, Devin, let's get back to your situation. We don't have that much time, but I'd like to get the audience a feel of what it was like for you to be in your apartment during this conflict with Iran.
Okay, so our apartment is a newer apartment, and the newer buildings being taller, every single apartment has a bedroom that seconds as a safe room. That means that it has reinforced walls. It has a heavy metal plate that rolls over the window and a heavy metal second door. Now, if you open that up, it looks just like any other bedroom. But when there's an alert, we have an app. And the app tells us, first of all, when a missile was launched and is headed in our direction. And that gives you about 10, 13 minutes to go into your safe room. And then when the missile is actually coming, it hasn't been shot down, then you get alert you hear in the air outside and you hear on your phone, and it tells you get in the safe room, and you have only 90 seconds, and you close the door and the window, and basically you're safe. There were 26 Iranian missiles out of 500 launched that landed, and one drone out of 1,000 drones that landed. And of those, 29 people were killed, but only 4 of them, as far as I know, were outside their safe room for one reason or another. So the people in their safe room were basically okay. One safe room was hit, and the people in that safe room died, a direct hit by a ballistic missile. It's not going to protect you against that, but it will protect you against shrapnel. And in one case in Bat Yam, the safe room on the floor above and below the direct hit, the people were fine. Only the people were directly hit by a ballistic missile. So your chances are much better in the safe room. Now, in the older buildings in Israel, which were, say, 4 to 6 floors, they didn't build them with safe rooms. There was a basement downstairs. And that was designed for air raids where you thought you have a lot of time when the planes are coming. And you don't have that kind of time with a missile. So what happens is that everyone in the building in the middle of the night has to get up in their pajamas or whatever they're wearing or not wearing and run down 6 or 8 flights or get in a little elevator and rush down and get into the basement. And then there's an all clear in about 10 minutes and go back up. And this can happen a number of times a night. So to those people who are more than half of Israel, that's a hardship. For us, it wasn't a hardship. We walked over to the other room. We closed the door. If we felt there were a lot of alerts that night, we just slept there. It's a bedroom. A couple times my granddaughter slept over. She's 10, and she didn't even wake up with the alerts. In the day, there weren't many alerts. Israelis are extremely stoic and used to this sort of thing. So when we went outside, everyone was out and about. We went to buy groceries. The restaurants were full. Israelis are like that. They're used to this. They've been under missile fire for years, and it's not really they lost sleep over it because jumping in and out of the shelters. But other than that, it was not for us personally much of a hardship, and for most Israelis, it doesn't seem to be too much of a hardship. It's one of the strengths of Israel that Iran and our enemies don't have, is Israel's been built for this, and people are used to this, and you're not going to win a war with Israel by caving in the will of the civilian population. Civilian population is amazingly strong-willed, and all they wanted was the army to keep going, and don't worry about us, go and do the job.
And as I've said before, they didn't finish the job. I realize we have a difference of opinion on that. I don't consider it a victory. I consider it a delaying tactic. They set the Iranian back months or maybe even years, but it certainly isn't over. Devin, I'd like to thank you very much. I'll give you about a minute if there's anything else you'd like to say that you haven't had a chance.
Well, that's pretty much it. I can just tell you a little more about being in Israel. My wife, Tanya, was a little bit nervous when we went to the supermarket. She said, well, if there's a attack right now, where do we run? However, there are public shelters all over the place. I went to the gym in my building, which was very crowded since people couldn't go to work. And there is a gym there is a shelter in the lobby. So pretty much wherever you go in Israel, there's some sort of public shelter. We did have friends who lived in one of those older buildings who too many people got on the elevator because they were rushing, and the elevator got caught between two floors. And so in the middle of the night, in the middle of their pajamas, they had to be rescued, so that's very difficult. So yes, there's that kind of hardship, but overall, Israel weathered the war very well, and Iran did not achieve its goal of frightening the Israeli people or forcing them to surrender.
Devin Spear, again, thank you very much. Obviously, we'll have you on again. Wonderful presentation, very interesting and very important. As I mentioned before, next Sunday, Mayor Jalvitz returns. He will address the topic, with Israel seemingly losing the war of ideas in Gaza. Israel's only sane course of action to ending the conflict is an unbridled and devastating military victory, notwithstanding the political cost. I think it's amazing how European countries will criticize Israel, the ones that stood by or actually participated in the Holocaust, and they're giving Israel advice, and I think they should be totally disregarded.
Part of that is the guilt over the Holocaust. They're trying to say that in positions of power, the Jews would be just as bad as they were.